Sulu didn't expect to find Chekhov lounging on his bed, wearing nothing but a pair of pajama pants.
When defending the validity of fanfic as an art form, people often like to point out that classic literature, like Dante's Inferno, is technically fanfiction. It's a nice argument, but it doesn't really make sense in the context of modern fanfic culture. Transformative fandom, the term for communities that create new works based on pre-existing source material, evolved in a 20th century capitalist context. This subculture was shaped by the existence of copyright law. We all understand that it's fine to publish a novel about Hamlet or Cinderella, because those characters aren't protected by copyright. But if you try to publish a novel about the Avengers, you'll get into trouble with Marvel. Fanfic is generally a non-profit hobby, where creators have total artistic freedom, as long as they don't try to turn a profit. But this wasn't always the case. Over the past few decades, as transformative fandom evolved from a secretive hobby into a thriving mainstream online subculture, fanfic writers often faced legal roadblocks. Sometimes this came from copyright holders who struck out against unauthorized fanfic. Other times, the pushback had a more puritanical tone, penalizing fans for creating adult-rated or queer-themed material. This is actually a defining theme of fandom's journey through internet history, tying in with waves of backlash against sexual freedom of expression. Before the internet, fans shared their work in fanzines, from criticism and commentary to fan art or fanfiction. Distributed by mail and sold at conventions, this publishing ecosystem set the stage for when transformative fandom would shift online in the 90s. The 1970s were when adult-rated material really began to take hold, including slash fanfic, romantic or erotic stories about same-sex pairings like Kirk and Spock or Starsky and Hutch. It was common for more mature fanzines to include content warnings, similar to what we see online today. Queer stories and fan art also faced homophobic criticism from within the community. But while Kirk Spock slash was a topic of endless debate among Star Trek fans in the 70s and 80s, fanzines had more serious concerns than community backlash. Homophobic anti-obscenity and anti-sodomy laws were still in place across the US, making it illegal to distribute same-sex erotica in many states. Fanzine publishers were rightfully concerned about legal repercussions, so slash fanfic was usually shared in a secretive manner. And while copyright holders generally looked the other way when it came to fanzines as a whole, a lot of them didn't approve of sexual content. In 1981, the director of the official Star Wars fan club shared an open letter to fanzine publishers, making it clear that Lucasfilm had a strict policy against pornography. It threatened legal action against fans who published X-rated material that, in Lucasfilm's words, darkened the reputation of our company. Lucasfilm also disapproved of what it referred to as homosexual expressions of love, amounting to a total ban on slashfic. Star Wars fans obviously kept publishing, but Lucasfilm kept close tabs on fanzines, and this inevitably had a chilling effect. This may be part of the reason why slashfic about Han Solo, Luke Skywalker and Lando Calrissian never gained the same cultural footprint as Kirk Spock, a cornerstone of early Star Trek fandom. In the late 90s, fanfic culture moved online, embracing discussion forums like Usenet and private email lists. Just like with fanzines, adult content and slash were shared in a more private manner, with fans fearing social or legal consequences. Fanfic also continued to be controversial, for more complicated cultural reasons than the simple fact that it sometimes included sex. Transformative fandom is a female-dominated space, and recent demographic surveys indicate that fanfic communities include disproportionate numbers of queer, trans, and non-binary fans. So while mainstream pop culture is often dominated by the straight male gaze, fanworks are more likely to cater to marginalized voices.
Looking for me.
Fandom provides a place for women to express their sexuality in a private forum, and for queer people to tell stories that couldn't be found or published in a mainstream context. This inevitably inspired different reactions, compared to, say, the existence of nude photos in Playboy magazine. Anti-fanfic backlash frequently has a tone of conservative moral panic.
I must remind you, this goes against the Bureau's policy of male and female agents consorting in the same hotel room while on assignment.
The internet brought an influx of new fans, since Usenet and Yahoo groups were far more accessible than what came before. In the 90s, The X-Files was a game-changing fandom, a mainstream hit that introduced the word shipping to refer to romantic pairings like Mulder and Scully. Unsurprisingly, copyright holders began to take notice of these new fan communities. The mid-90s saw companies like 20th Century Fox and Lucasfilm try to quash the rise of fan sites, sending cease and desist notices to websites that used, for example, the official X-Files logo or images of The Simpsons cast. This harsh backlash led fans to launch campaigns against copyright holders, using slogans like "Free speech is out there," a riff on the X-Files tagline. Speaking to the Christian Science Monitor in 1996, an X-Files fandom activist said, "Fox execs want complete and total control over how every facet of their company is portrayed on the internet. They have thus far shown themselves unwilling to compromise. If there will be no peaceful compromise, we are willing to fight." Gradually, the fans and copyright holders did learn to compromise. As internet culture evolved, so did the relationship between copyright law and transformative fandom. With the exception of a few copyright holders like the author Anne Rice, who strongly disapproved of fanfiction, transformative fandom was more likely to be left alone, allowing an influx of fan sites to spring up in the late 90s and early 2000s. Harry Potter was the tipping point, a massive cultural phenomenon that brought a wave of young people to fandom. With new books coming out every year or so, Harry Potter fandom was incredibly active, launching huge fan sites like MuggleNet, fanfic archives like Fiction Alley, and a new generation of mega-popular fans who built careers out of the Harry Potter community. But the mainstreaming of fandom came with its own downsides. As Western fan communities began to centralize on public websites, whether that was fan-run archives or blogging sites like LiveJournal, fans were subject to the whims of whoever was running those platforms. This began the era of LiveJournal, fanfic.net, Tumblr, and AO3. As more children and teenagers began to participate in fandom, fan communities also developed more sophisticated content warnings, with some archives explicitly dedicated to adult materials, while others were more family-friendly. This echoed the perennial public debates over what kind of content should be allowed in mainstream movies, TV, and pop music. Some people think that pop culture should be censored to protect impressionable audiences, while others argue that parents are responsible for their children's media consumption. Fanfic sites often included clear age warnings, but some platforms preferred to just delete adult content, causing uproar among creators. The most infamous examples were the content purges of fanfiction.net, one of the biggest multi-fandom archives. In 2002, fanfiction.net removed every fanfic rated NC-17, resulting in widespread backlash from fan communities and inspiring an exodus to smaller independent archives. 10 years later in 2012, fanfic.net launched another purge to much the same effect. Over on the blogging platform LiveJournal, something similar happened in 2007. In an attempt to curtail genuinely harmful content, LiveJournal suspended the accounts of hundreds of unrelated users. This was framed as a crackdown on child pornography, but the purge also affected a wide range of blogs, including literary discussion groups, abuse recovery communities, and fanfic. This became an inciting incident for the creation of Archive of Our Own, or AO3, a multi-fandom archive that launched in 2008. It's now one of the best-known fanfic sites in the world. AO3 definitely has its detractors, including people who object to the archive's policy of allowing writers to publish anything, including fanfic involving taboo topics. And like any major platform, it also has issues with harassment and misuse. But for the most part, AO3 has a positive reputation, praised both for the functionality of its tagging and warning systems, and the way it deals with recurring legal issues in fandom. Since AO3 is a non-profit site, it has different concerns and goals than a platform like Wattpad, a commercial site that hosts both fanfic and original fiction. AO3's purpose is to preserve fan works from the kind of mass deletion that people saw on fanfiction.net, and to provide legal protections against copyright crackdowns, supported by fandom academics and legal experts. Some of the sources in this video actually came from AO3's sister site, the fandom history site Fanlore. These crackdowns are a particular concern for fans who create queer media, which is often among the first to be labelled as inappropriate by commercial platforms. And depending on the laws in your country, even AO3 isn't safe. In China, Archive of Our Own was actually banned by the government in 2020, following a public backlash against fanfic about the actor Xiao Zhan. This controversy was a reaction to fans shipping Xiao Zhan with a male co-star, a scandal with serious repercussions due to the Chinese government's anti-gay policies. Back in the 2010s, as AO3 grew in popularity on the English language internet, fans also began to migrate away from LiveJournal onto platforms like Tumblr and Twitter. For some people, the final straw came in 2017, when LiveJournal's new Russian owners implemented, among other things, a ban on LGBTQ content. By this point though, Tumblr had already replaced LiveJournal as the new hub of fan activity in the Western world. But if you've learned anything from this video, you may already be able to predict what happened next. Tumblr launched its own content purge. Tumblr's NSFW purge arrived in 2018. It was precipitated by Tumblr being temporarily removed from the App Store due to reports of child pornography, a serious concern for any platform. But after removing the offending material, Tumblr decided to suspend a huge number of accounts that posted perfectly legal adult content, particularly nude photos, art, and GIFs. This so-called porn ban was a major blow for sex workers operating on the site, and became headline news due to Tumblr's popularity as a hosting platform for pornographic GIFs. This coincided with the passing of FOSTA SESTA, an American law that supposedly combated sex trafficking, but was accused of endangering sex workers by blocking them from using safe platforms online. Some critics characterized it as an internet censorship bill in disguise. Tech experts also connected Tumblr's porn ban to Apple's anti-sex policies. If a platform wants to remain on the App Store, it's encouraged to remove all kinds of NSFW content. Tumblr's purge seemed to hit a wide range of accounts, ranging from straightforward porn to sex education blogs, X-rated fan art, and queer content that wasn't remotely pornographic. Plenty of totally innocent images were flagged by early versions of Tumblr's anti-porn filter. Echoing a long history of similar crackdowns, this led to a mass exodus from the site. Tumblr fandom is still active today, albeit to a slightly lesser extent than in the 2010s. And ironically enough, the site still hasn't eradicated the porn bots that spam the platform with unwanted NSFW content. But Tumblr's latest update suggests a new direction in fan culture's ever-evolving legal conflicts. When Tumblr announced its new subscription service in July 2021, titled Post Plus, it singled out fanfic writers as a potential source of revenue. In other words, Tumblr was encouraging fans to profit from copyrighted material, something that's likely to result in takedown notices from copyright holders. In recent years, more people have begun to openly make money from creative fan works, either through commercial fan art, private fanfic commissions on social media, erotic cosplay on OnlyFans, or Kickstarter projects like fan books and fandom documentaries. Some of these projects are overlooked or permitted by copyright holders, but others exist in dicey legal territory. Tumblr's Post Plus is the first major platform to actually endorse this kind of unauthorized for-profit fan work, and it may well lead to a new wave of copyright takedowns. So while fanfic has shifted closer to mainstream pop culture, with Hollywood franchises publicly marketing themselves to fandom, fan creators still face some of the same pushback that they did 50 years ago. Pressure groups still want to crack down on sexual content, particularly if it's made by and for queer people. Corporate entities still want to protect their intellectual property. And while fans have found new avenues to make money from their creative fan works, the safest way for fanfic to remain free is if it is, well, free. Thanks so much for watching this episode. What are your thoughts on fanfic's journey through internet history? We look forward to hearing from you in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, tap the like button, and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss a future episode of The Lost History of the Internet. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.